The Print e-file 1099s function can be found under the vendor drop-down menu or one of the icons representing this function. To process 1099s, you are probably best off selecting the 1099 wizard. Once open, you will be prompted to cycle through several windows to help ensure you select the right vendors before you print out your 1099 forms. A 1099 form is a form required by the IRS to report vendor income received by your business. The 1099 form has several boxes that can be populated, but the one most pertinent to most businesses is Box 7, Non-Employee Compensation. The 1099 wizard is designed to minimize your chances of errors, but it is not foolproof, and so unless you are highly confident you are doing things right, it's best to consult with someone else who knows and can look over your shoulder. Sometimes it is tricky to tell if a vendor is a 1099 vendor in the first place. There are usually certain criteria as to what designates a 1099 vendor or not. Also, certain professions are automatically designated as 1099, so you really need to make sure you identify who is a 1099 vendor in the first place. The first window in the 1099 wizard just outlines the other windows you are going to cycle through, so you'll want to read this first and then click the Get Started button. The next window will show you all of your vendors, and any that have been selected as a 1099 vendor will be checkmarked and will show up first in alphabetical order. If you recall from earlier in this lesson, you designate if a vendor is a 1099 eligible vendor by selecting the Tax Settings tab and check marking vendor eligible for 1099 and then putting in the vendor tax ID. We did this when we set up vendors. After verifying the accuracy of your 1099 vendor list, you can click on the Continue button, and then the detailed information for the 1099 vendors selected is shown. You will want to make sure the name, address, and most importantly, the tax ID are populated correctly. If anything is not right or missing, you can go back in the particular vendor's setup file and make the appropriate changes. When you click on the Continue button after this task, then you will see which account were used to track your vendor activity, and you will be able to select the box you want populated when the 1099s are to be printed. As mentioned earlier, the typical choice should be Box 7, and you can always click on the Report All Payment in Box 7 if they don't indicate this choice already. But if you know it should be something else, then go ahead and make the change by clicking on the drop-down list and choosing the right selection accordingly. Once completed, click on Continue. Note on top, the prior tasks you've completed are highlighted. This window will allow you to exclude payments that do not need to be 1099. By clicking on an appropriate notation link, you can get an explanation of what type of transactions can be excluded, and you are also given the notation you can use to have QuickBooks exclude these transactions. In general, credit card, debit card, gift card, and third-party payment networks can be excluded, and the designations are bullet pointed in the lower section of the window. The View Included and Excluded buttons allows you to see which transaction fall into which category after you may have made any exclusions. You can keep tweaking your choices until you have everything right. Once done with this window, click on Continue. A summary of the included payment totals to be printed on the 1099s is shown in this window. Notice that the first two vendors have zero amounts in Box 7. This occurs if the threshold amount to require 1099 is not met. As of the completion of this video, the threshold is $600 annually. Therefore, any vendors who do not meet the threshold, even if they are designated 1099 vendors, does not need a 1099 form printed by you. By clicking Continue, the last step before printing is performed, and you either print your 1099s on your own printer, or if you want to use the Intuit e-file service, you can click on the Go to Intuit 1099 e-file service. Note, there is a charge for this service, but it saves you from buying and printing the forms and then mailing them. Let's click on the Print 1099s button. The printing button will by default put in the previous year And if this is correct, press OK or make whatever changes are necessary in the drop-down window. The Select 1099s to Print window then appears, and it will show you which vendor and amounts will print out and whether your ID and address information is complete. And then you can click on the Print 1099 button, and when you are done printing your 1099s, you will then want to print your 1096, which is a summary of your 1099 information and is a required form. When you click either Print button, the standard print window will come up, and you can make whatever changes you want regarding the printer you are going to use. Otherwise, just click on Print, and your 1099s or 1096 will print. And of course, before you do this, make sure the proper forms are in your printer, since special forms are required for 1099s and the 1096.